New Falls Count Anywhere coming to you, recording this on Sunday, May 25th, 2025. Coming off the heels now of the latest Saturday Night's main event that is aired last night on Peacock. And of course, react to it, joined by our co-host here of the show. We got my man, Mr. Rob the Genius, of course, 1/3 of the Minor Wrestling podcast, as well as host of the Rob the Genius podcast. Rob, what's going on, brother?
Hey, nothing much, man. Everything's good.
I'm good, brother. Good. And Sunday, Sunday. We may make this the normal day for the show. I know I told Rob off the air a little behind baseball that football season typically, we've been recording the show on Tuesdays, but typically on Tuesdays also during football season, I'm normally tied up doing the Huddle Up podcast. So I may start doing this show on Sundays, but honestly, Sundays might actually be the best day to record these things because, like, honestly, as a wrestling fan, I like Sundays because number one, you're literally completing the week because you have SmackDown Monday and Friday. Even if you bring up AEW, their last show of the week is on a Saturday. So if I do decide to watch Collision, I can react on Sunday as well too. Then we can start the week also too, going into Raw and all the content for the week. But of course, Earnestly podcast. Of course, you can find on any podcast catcher, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, you name it, Amazon, and of course the YouTube page at youtube.com/@EarnestlyPod. Clips of the show on TikTok at EarnestlyPod, as well as Instagram at EarnestlyPod as well. As I just said a little while ago, we just had yet another Saturday's main event last night that took place. Love seeing the set. And by the way, not for nothing, Rob, one of the things I really appreciated last night watching the show is they really done a good job of really tapping into not just the nostalgia, obviously having Jesse there, and of course some of the set looks pretty close to what it was in, like, let's say, not necessarily the 80s set, but mostly the early 90s set they did. I do like that they focus on an intimate setting. It was a smaller crowd, 10,000 seats, I believe. One of my buddies was there. Shout out to my boy Juan. He was at the show last night. Very intimate. Now, that venue that they were at last night, they've done main events there in the past. Yeah. Back in 1989, I remember the 89 main event was there. The 80, I want to say 86 as well too was there as well. And they do shows regularly there. I actually like the fact they went in a targeted, smaller venue. It felt very old school, not just because of the set, but even just the vibe of the show. I like that. They really tapped into it in a real way. I'm glad they did that. So
yeah, and because I mean, again, sometimes the arenas can make shows, really.
Yeah, of course.
And everything doesn't need to be in a bigger basketball arena or whatever. Sometimes it is better. It's just better to be in a more intimate setting, and also, because when you make everything big, huge, end all be all, it's like, well, that line from The Incredibles, if everybody's super, no one is, right?
Yeah.
So it's good to have to kind of have a hierarchy of things like okay, this show is more important than just the regular TV, but we're not gonna this isn't gonna be another like big sensory overload kind of thing,
right? I gotta say, the only negative about this for me, and this is my personal thing, whatever. I've gotten spoiled now by having most of the shows I watch. Number one, I don't watch Raw and SmackDown live most of this. I have to. I watch them in hindsight. If I even watch them at all, I watch them in hindsight when the ads are gone. The ads are not there in the on-demand version of it, but when you're watching in real time live, you have to deal with the ads. I forgot the main event has the ads, so that kind of perturbed me a little bit. That kind of annoyed me last night a little bit watching the show live. Again, that's a me problem, so I'm not complaining. I get what they're doing there, but it kind of reminds you also too that this is not a PLE. Like PLE, you don't have ads like that. The PLEs are just run through the 3 hours, 4 hours, or maybe ever. The Raw, SmackDown main event. The main event is not quite PLE, obviously, but it's important enough to where you could do big things in there, and we had some big things last night that happened on the show. So we'll do here, but we'll go through the matches here. Each match in this kind of because a lot of things happen that are important, I think, for some of these matches here. And I want to break down and kind of see the lay of the land going forward as we now. Dude, by the way, Rob, we are we're less than 2 weeks from Money in the Bank.
Yeah, and man, the calendar is loaded for the up
Yes,
between now and like through the summer. I mean, they're
and
going to
they
be
last night they even announced Evolution, July 13th.
yeah. So now we've got like between now and the end of August, there are I think 5 PLEs.
Now, five
Money,
main show PLEs, or you're not going NXT,
yeah,
are you?
well, yeah, Money in the Bank, and then there's Night of Champions, and there's
Evolution
Evolution, then there's SummerSlam,
and a
and
main
then
event between the two also.
yeah, there's a Saturday night's main event in there, and then there's also a at the end of August there's what like a Clash in
I think
Paris or
Paris, right?
something like that.
Yeah, yeah,
So that's 5 plus a Saturday night's main event. Plus there's a NXT Great American Bash in there.
yeah. I saw that announced last night too.
So
Worlds
that's
Collide also too. Worlds Collide's coming also, I believe.
oh yeah, and then so that's what like 8 things, man.
Yeah. So they stay on the gas right now, and I think they're doing this now because they know between the fall into Royal Rumble, that little 4 month gap between September and January, it's pretty dry because a lot of folks who watch this stuff are also football fans, and football dominates the conversation. So, they're gonna try. They're trying to jam what they could between now and then because they know they'll lose some eyeballs for a couple months anyway. I know for me, for example, like I still watch the product, but I'm just not as engaged in the same way mentally as I am right now or before WrestleMania.
Yeah, and so because after that Clash in Paris or whatever it is,
Yeah,
the next thing isn't scheduled for like another 5 weeks. So the
yeah,
schedule slows down after August.
yeah. And you got Survivor Series November, of course, and then I think after that, that's the last thing they do for the year, and pretty much what I've noticed with the schedule, they really front loaded heavy, especially in the middle of the summer, as you see here now, of course, and then even before WrestleMania, they're doing things, But I also think that the main event too, also having the main events there, are a nice space buffer because again, they're not PLEs, but they're important enough to
Yeah.
where you can do big things. So look at it right now. First match last night, we had Seth Rollins and Braun Breaker against CM Punk and Sami Zayn, which big things. We said talk about big things happening. We got the return of Bronson Reed last night, and he
Yeah.
looks like he joined the faction now with Seth and Braun.
Yeah. And well, we had been saying that they needed somebody else. And now I did not know he was going to be back this soon because all the way his injury was described, it sounded pretty bad.
Yeah,
So it's been about 6 months. So yeah, and look, I thought they did a great job of keeping it a surprise, and like because they didn't even there was never even any chatter between Seth and Braun that hey we need one more person, nothing like that. There were no teases, like it happened, and yeah, so I give them all the credit. I mean, I love that they kept it a surprise,
yeah.
and Bronson Reed didn't even say anything about I'll be back soon. I'm almost ready. He didn't post any of that stuff. Um, so he kept radio silent basically, and so did they. And now so now there's the kind of a twist because Bronson Reed and Seth Rollins were enemies last time they were together anywhere.
And wasn't Bronson and Braun also enemies too?
Yeah, and well no, that was a Braun Strowman that he was feuding with,
Okay,
not
okay,
Braun.
okay.
Yeah, so they're going to have to they're going to have to explain that, of course. Or I mean, it doesn't have to be anything long and drawn out. It can just be, hey, he decided to, you know, better is better than not better together, right? I mean,
Right.
but no, I really dug that they did that and they kept it a surprise. And honestly, look, I think this was the best match of the night. Honestly, I mean,
You think so?
yeah,
It was good. It was good. I will say that. Yes. Um, I think that the thing I'm looking at here, I'm looking at when I see these things. Like I was never. I think I said this even before when I predicted it was going to happen, and then when it did happen, I even said the show. I think you agree with me also too. Like I never saw Seth and Paul Heyman being the only thing. I knew that if Seth and Paul Heyman were going to be a thing, it wouldn't be just those two. It had to be something different from what he did with Roman, what he did something different from what he did with Brock, and I mean Punk. It had to be something different, and different to me means something bigger than just those two guys. And I think the cool thing about this situation too, also, and look, I don't remember exactly who else did a Paul Heyman work with anybody else outside of those three guys I mentioned. I think Curtis Axel at one point. Someone said that Curtis Axel worked at one point,
Yeah,
maybe.
that didn't work very well.
Right, but overall, most guys that get into the parameter of Paul Heyman tend to do pretty well for themselves in some point. And I think if you're obviously Braun Breaker, Bronson Reed too, especially getting into the parameter of Paul Heyman should do wonders for the career moving forward. Like Seth is the main man. We know Seth's going to work no matter what. I don't see
Yeah.
Seth and Paul Heyman being long for this world at some point. I see that breaking up at some point within the next year. I think
Oh yeah.
when I saw this faction, I said, yeah, I see Heyman at some point, going with Braun Breaker, and now who knows now? Bronson Reed down in the picture. I see these guys now because they're associated with Paul Heyman. These guys' careers could be launched now from this point on. So that's when I saw Bronson Reed. It's like, yo, this is the opportunity here in a lifetime here for him, because anybody gets from there, Paul Heyman pretty much is going to become a main man at some point.
Yeah, and Braun Breaker, he's already like off the field, so to speak. He's already in with the NYE crew because
Yeah,
I mean he's working out with them and he's riding with them, whatnot. So
yeah,
he's been taken into the fold already.
yeah,
So yeah, this is well, I guess this is ultimately, I think this is a vehicle to kind of cement him up at kind of like the main event level because they needed something. They needed some type of avenue or some type of vehicle to take him up there,
yeah,
and him going with Heyman is would be perfect for that
yeah.
because he's still kind of, I mean, promo wise, he's still like he does kind of just play the hits from his dad and his uncle. So still, so having somebody, I mean, he would benefit from having somebody to talk for him at length when it's time to do like a big monologue or something.
Which is exactly why I think, and I hope they're doing this. You've seen a little more of this little by little with some other characters where they have managers or like advocates next to them. I hope this is those sign of things to come. Where like we're going to see more of these like managers types, because one of the things I think we don't appreciate now, and maybe do. I know you and I do because we're old school guys and we've seen the product develop in the last 40 something years. Is that the value of a manager goes a long way. The presentation, when you have a Jimmy Hart or a Mr. Fuji, obviously Bobby Heenan, Paul Heyman, you name it, Slick, of course, my favorite all time. When you have those guys do a fantastic job elevating guys that not great in the stick, but good in ring talent, or those guys are good at elevating guys that make me care about them, for example, because of who they're attached to. And I feel like I'm not saying I would never be attached to Braun Breaker. Braun Breaker is going to be a talented guy, this and that, but he's not a great guy to talk, obviously not a great talker, like in the same way. But you put him with Paul Heyman, that
Yeah.
that's match made in gold. That's just I think that should work, and even Russell Reed too, especially. So I hope WWE now is leaning to that more of having more advocates, managers, we'll call them, going forward, because that shit works, man. That shit always works.
Yeah, I hope they do. I mean, that's something that there need to be more of, and and because we grew up on Bobby Heenan and Jim Cornette and all that, and and because like, I mean, Cornette used, I mean, he got just all types of heat. I mean, people want to kill
Mm-hmm.
him,
Of
and
course.
same with Heenan, and then guys like Jimmy Hart and then JJ Dillon, and um so yeah, I hope that some kind of way they maybe start doing that more, because I think Heyman's going to do wonders for Braun Breaker, especially when when this whole thing kind of dissolves and it's just Heyman and Braun together. I think he's going. Yeah, I mean, I think he's going to do wonders for him.
Do you see them adding another guy, or is this enough? Are we good?
Um,
These three.
well, I mean, it depends. I think, like, if they're going to do the War Games again this year, then they may not add more people to the group, but they're gonna, have to find a couple of people to associate with.
Maybe rent somebody.
Yeah, that's kind of what I mean. That's what Solo did last year with Bronson Reed. They basically rent, because he had him, Jacob, and and then the two Tongans, and they needed a fifth guy, and Bronson Reed was just they kind of rented him out for that match. Um, so I could see them, renting out two more guys for that. But so I think it just depends on whether or not they're going to do the War Games again this year. Because if so, then they're going to need one or two more guys.
Yeah. I don't think they need anybody else, honestly. I think because of how the size of Braun, the size of Bronson Bronson Reed, rather, because they got two really strong big guys. You don't necessarily need a fourth guy at this point. If they added someone like, say, Austin Theory, then I'd say, okay, add a fourth or fifth guy because you need another muscle. But you got two muscle guys there now with Seth and with Paul Heyman. That may be enough. I mean, I'm not opposed to them doing one other guy in the faction, for the record, or even a female. I've been saying all along that if you want to go female, you add Becky because it makes sense to her and Seth be married, of course. But the look of this faction right now going into the summer looks really cool. Like I would not have thought Bronson Reed would have been someone that would have been used. But again, this is how you elevate guys. And for the record, I'm not a fan of like factions that the mistake the NWO made in 96, 97 is that it got too big. Like when it had 5 or 6 guys, it was fine. That was the max. It should have been the original 3. I'm okay with Savage. I'm okay with maybe even DiBiase, whatever, or the Giant. Beyond that, it got too ridiculous. I think the WWE does do a good job of keeping those factions to a nice number of 3, 4, maybe 5.
Yeah, and then because with the NWO, what happened is that they kept they eventually started bringing in basically job guys and guys who did never won anything, and that's always because that's a problem with with the whole White Six thing, right? I mean, people love the entrances and when all of that stuff, but when it's time for them to get in the ring, like the whole group is a bunch of jobbers,
Yeah.
and so so you don't want, like, when you have if you have a main event level faction, then you don't want to put people in there who are never going to be in a main event match ever, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, that happened with the NWO. They put too many people in there, because like the archetype for all these factions is the Four Horsemen from back in the mid '80s, and all 4 of those guys, worked big main event level matches or big matches on major shows, right? And that was part of what made it such a big deal. So when you start if you're gonna have a main event level faction, then you gotta have main event level guys.
Right. Yeah. All right. So okay. Next match here we had the women's U.S. title on the line. Zelina Vega defeated Chelsea Green. My biggest takeaway of this match is this: Chelsea Green's really over. She is really over. I know she was getting cheered last night, but I hope to God they don't turn her face. She's such a great heel.
Yeah, her character doesn't lend itself to being a babyface.
Right. You know how I was saying, like, with Tiffany Stratton was, they're trying to force her to be a babyface when she's really supposed to be a heel. They got Chelsea Green in the right spot here. And I love the package here with her, with Alba Fire and Piper Niven. Of course, I love that whole package. I'm okay with her losing. Do you know why? Put her in chase mode, because I think when she's kind of, she reminds me of, actually, now I'm thinking about it. She's kind of going the same route where Dominic Mysterio went. Like she was so hated at first, annoying, but now people enjoy her work now. Where to the point where now you can still not like her, but also appreciate her and cheer her, like, kind of in a sense. Like, the characters are so over at this point now, where, like, even if you cheer her, even if she gets cheered in certain locations here and there, a WrestleMania here, whatever, you can really appreciate what she's doing. I think she could be the next. We don't talk about the stars and the women. Like, obviously you have the Becky, Charlotte, all that. Tiffany, Bianca. But I think Chelsea's one of the most underrated women on the roster, just based on not just her work, but also just her character. Really, right now going.
Because she said recently, like she wants to be, she's not trying to be like the female John Cena. She's trying to be like the female Miz. And
Well, she's doing a damn good job then, if that's the case.
yeah, I mean, because she plays a traditional kind of silly, wacky pro wrestling character, and we don't have that many of those,
I mean,
and
yep.
we don't have that many of those now, and we definitely don't have we have hardly any of them on the women's side. I mean, like almost every woman wrestler character is serious, in some form or fashion,
Yeah.
Uh, so she's one of the few that's just completely this wacky, silly pro wrestling character. Um, and I think that's why more people have taken to it so much. Because I mean, she's doing something different than all the other women. Like um, the only women just period who were like doing something along those lines, like Tony Storm and Harley Cameron over there in AEW, like
Mm-hmm.
that's really it. The people who are just playing like silly, dumb, stupid, wacky pro wrestling characters. You know, almost everyone else is doing some variation of some, serious type of thing. And so I think again, that's what I think people have taken to her, the way that they have.
She's a throwback, which I
Yeah,
appreciate. You and I appreciate that stuff. She's a real wrestling character, which we need more of those, as you said. There's not enough of those. Especially on the female side, not enough of those, as you
yeah.
mentioned.
And she's very much
Um,
like
hmm?
and she's also kind of like a wacky sitcom character who's always like scheming and plotting and always gets, slipped on a banana peel or something
Yeah,
along the way. Like George Costanza or somebody like that.
yeah. Um, Zelina Vega, like I don't see her being a long term champion here. I think if these two good ladies meet again, where's Money in the Bank, another main event, maybe in SummerSlam, I think Chelsea could get that belt back.
Yeah, at this point, I think you don't put them back to if they're going to wrestle. If they're going to have another match, then yes, Chelsea's winning the title back. There's no point in them having another match and Chelsea losing again.
Yeah, and likely it like to be on Raw, if anything. Raw, what branding on Raw, SmackDown, it like to be on Raw. So. But and that's not you knock on Zelina. I just have a hard time believing her as a champion. Even though I like her a lot.
Yeah, it's just
She's so small.
yeah.
I hate to
I've said
say
this
that. I feel like
before. I'll
insulting
say
her.
it. If she was 6 inches taller, we'd be having a different conversation.
But that's what I'm saying though, and I hate saying this though, because like
But that's the reality of it, man. I mean, like, well,
like
cause
like I look at Becky, or look at Charlotte, look at Timmy Strand, look at these ladies, Bianca. They look like world champions to me. They look like they present themselves as champions in terms of like the body. I'm not even trying to be like kind of like a sexist here. I mean, it's not even my point. It's more so like this is television. It's about believability. You know what
well,
I'm
I mean,
saying?
yeah. Well, and it applies to the men also. I mean, like
Yeah, it does.
so like nobody looks at Akira Tozawa and thinks he should be a world champion.
Exactly.
And this, well, because the other thing is like, remember this. We talk about storylines and all stuff all the time, but the premise for this is it's a fictional sport.
Right.
The premise is that these people are playing a sport for a living. They are professional athletes. That's the premise behind all of this. And if this was a real fighting sport, then Zelina wouldn't even get to wrestle Chelsea Green.
No.
She'd be in a different weight class. Okay.
In fact, and
Um,
Zelina to me is a we go back to what we were saying in the first part of the show about the value of advocates and managers. When she was doing that role with Andrade a couple years ago, she was fantastic at it. I
yeah.
was sitting there saying at one point that she could be an all time great. If you think about it, like you talk
Yeah.
about great like Sensational Sherry, and you talk about like other women that's done this role in the past. I saw her in that vein, but also someone that because she can wrestle, also to on top of that she can mix it up also to like Sherry did back in the day. And there's
Yeah.
value in that. A lot, actually, there's a lot of value in that. So I don't want to feel like I'm pigeonhole her into this like, well, she has to do this or not. But to me, her real value for me that I've seen based on body work is more in that manager advocate role.
Yeah, and that's I mean, yeah, look, I mean, I kind of think the same way. And I mean, look, it's one of those things. I mean, that's it's still the medium is still a visual thing, and I mean, even happen in like well, it even happens in real sports. Like there are boxers that like Mike Tyson looked like the heavyweight champion of the world, regardless of how skilled he was as a fighter. When he came out there, you're like, yeah, that guy, that's know,
Optics. That's the word.
yeah,
Optics.
Muhammad Ali, right? And then you have guys like there are guys who didn't, and they might have been great fighters, but you know, but when they came out, they were like, oh, that guy's a champ. Mm. And it made a difference in the box office, right? Guys like Mike Tyson sold a lot more, right? But then guys like Michael Moorer, didn't. And a lot of it is optics, it is presence and and how you look and how you walk to the ring and all this kind of stuff. I mean, yes, it matters. Certain football teams, even or basketball teams, you know, do better because of the the optics and the way the teams look and the way the players on the team look and the way they walk out there and the way the kind of histrionics they do on the court and all of that stuff, right? I mean, and we're in the music, same thing with bands. Like
Hmm.
you know, I mean, Eric Clapton is probably a better technical guitar player than most people playing the guitar,
Yeah.
right? But who do we gravitate more towards, right?
The, yeah.
I
That's
mean,
great.
guys who
Great, great
may not
analogy.
like, and then look, Jimi Hendrix. I don't think Eric Clapton is a better technical guitar player than Jimi Hendrix was probably.
But Jimmy's riffs are
But
a lot more, more memorable.
yeah, and so that's part of the deal. I mean, it's and it
And it's more pronounced, Rob. It's more pronounced when you're doing a scripted show. Like it's one thing if like a small person happens to win a title in boxing, it's real because they it was a real thing that happened to get through it. It looks weird, yes, but it happened. But in a scripted show, it's hard to believe that. And again, you're selling believability. You're not selling anything else but that.
right like they didn't when they're casting the Avengers, right? Um they cast Robert Downey Jr. played Tony Stark. He didn't play Thor.
Right.
Okay, I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah. Exactly.
I mean, you know, um, when they had to get somebody to play Thor, they had to get the Chris Hemsworth, the big, tall, muscle guy,
Hmm.
right? I mean, that's just, I mean, so yeah, I mean, so to that end, it's no, I mean, it sucks, and it's to a degree, and it's kind of unfair, but um, that's yeah, I mean, it's just kind of what it is, and but look, she's really great. She's really talented. She's really great at doing the work of being a pro wrestler.
Yeah.
But it's just, yeah, I mean, there's only so far. She's only so believable,
Yeah.
and
And
her.
there's no way you can really elevate her into main event status because I can't see her even being in a conversation with a Bianca or Charlotte or even a Timmy Stratton.
Or like, because like you put in there with Nia Jax, right?
Oh my gosh, you destroy her.
I mean, yeah, if you lay that out to be a competitive match with her and Nia Jax, like people are just gonna, there are gonna be some people just sitting there like, really?
Unless they're doing making the U.S. title for the women's division more of a lightweight kind of thing.
Yeah,
Unless
yeah, but
because even Lyra Valkyria, in some degree, has similar because she's smaller in size too, also. But Lyra's more filled out in ways where it
oh
looks more
yeah,
believable.
she's not like she's not as short, and yeah, it's just, but some people, I mean, yeah, some it just doesn't, I don't know, it doesn't work with some people, um, and if you are smaller, you do have to, I mean, you have to be, you have to do something else to make yourself believable,
Yeah, I
like,
agree with that. 100%.
and but still there is such thing as too small. I mean, just and that just kind of is what it is. And unfortunately, I think she's kind of in that space where it's just, I mean, once you get above certain level of competition, it's just like,
Right. All right. Next match. John Cena defeated R-Truth by pinfall. Actually, no time on the line. Shout out to my boy Big Jim. 3CT. He sent a text during the introductions of this match. He goes, "We don't deserve R-Truth." Man, he's so right, dude. So you have John Cena's intro, his entrance into the ring, his new entrance now, where he's like the belt's backwards, he's showing the thing behind and all that, and then you see R-Truth come out, same music, but doing the John Cena gimmick as a babyface,
yeah.
the whole thing. Fantastic stuff, man. Fantastic stuff. Solid match too. Also, and by the way, he was mimicking him also too in the ring as well. I did when we did a preview last week. I did predict that R-Truth would win because I figured it'd be part of the story, some shenanigans here and that. But Cena did pull it out. And
Yeah.
where is this story going? I guess at this point now with Cena.
Um, I don't know because yeah, I'm not sure. Because I guess we'll get to it with the main event, but
Yeah,
it looks like for at least the next month or so, he's not going to be defending the title
yeah,
against anybody. And I guess because they really don't, because obviously he defended against Randy, and this match wasn't a title match, but it was still a match. Um, and you can't do him and Cody this soon, obviously.
no, but we're on the way there. I think we'll get to the main event in a second.
Yeah, but so I think for right now, yeah, they're just kind of it's kind of a quasi holding pattern as far as defending a title right now.
So the old rule back in the day was, I'm not sure the rule still exists, but the rule was that a champion had to defend the title within 30 days or forfeit the title. Now, obviously, the WWE these days they tend to flex rules according to what they want to do. They don't pigeonhole themselves into that. That rule doesn't exist anymore, does it?
So again,
That rule about the 30 days, you have to defend it every 30 days.
oh no,
Once
they
every 30
they
days.
haven't nobody they haven't adhered
Yeah,
nobody
yeah.
adheres to that
That's
anymore.
because that was the case. Roman Reigns forfeited that title a long time ago. But
Yeah, and now I mean
yeah,
because I mean that was mainly a thing. That was just it was something it was a plot device basically. It was something that they used to to give to give someone an out if they wanted to do a storyline where somebody had to vacate a title or something
and
or
because
somebody.
and back in house shows too, also been doing house shows back in the day, so it gave more credence to like, okay, well, it means it's being prioritized, so and that kind of thing. Um, yeah, I thought it was a fun. I thought it was a fun match all overall. The next one here, of course, the steel cage match. Damian Priest finally defeats Drew McIntyre by escaping the cage. We had also Jason Ventura on commentary, and I thought he did a fantastic job
Oh yeah,
on
yeah, I love
commentary last night.
it.
God, masterclass again.
Yeah, and again, he's just heelish enough, right? He
Yeah,
walks right up to that line of and then but without it because again, so many heel commentators, that they try too hard, and it gets to the point of just being like where they're just doing it too much, and Jesse is he was a heel as a wrestler, obviously, and but he would still give if the babyface did something good or they did he would give them credit for doing something good, right? Or if they did something successful, he would give them credit for that. It's just, but he walked up to the line without overdoing it, and that's why I always look, I always dug him more than most heel commentators. Now, obviously, if there's somebody who's a heel wrestler or a current heel manager, and they're sitting in on commentary, then yeah, you expect them to dial it all the way up all the time. But he wasn't an active wrestler or manager. He was, and so him dialing it up all the time would have been, doing too much. So so to me, he did exactly what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to walk up to the line, and not go too far over it. So I mean, I always enjoy hearing him do commentary. And I know he's not
Yeah.
going to do it. You know, him coming, he's not going to come back full time ever. But
No, no,
the
no.
whole,
But he's being used the right way, using main events, and we do enough a year now to where okay. And I think for me also too, what it is too also is the voice. That's what is really the difference between him and everybody else. He has the right voice, the right tone and voice to make that shit like cook.
yeah, yeah,
Um, and he still sounds like he was 1986 and 87. I
yeah,
literally, Rob, before we started the show, before the show started last night, I was actually watching the November 1986 version of edition of the main event. And I guess Jesse, of course, Jesse and Vince were doing the show. I watched the first 30 minutes of the show. And this is Jesse's voice there. And then literally watching the new shit last night, nothing's different in the voice. It's still
yeah,
there. The tenor's still there. The tone is still there. The wittiness, it's still there.
yeah.
What's more impressive about him now is that he's not even involved in the day-to-day product like he was back then. And he can just step right in and just say the right things at the right time.
Yeah. And so yeah. I mean, I'm really happy that he came back to do this.
Yeah, I'm glad. As for the match itself, Priest and Drew, good again, good match. These guys are great. 2 years though, so they said last night that was a 2-year odyssey. I know it was a
Well, because
year. I didn't know it was 2 years.
man, well, because all right, because Priest catching the briefcase at WrestleMania last year. Before that, well, they were on the same team in the War Games in 2023. I'm not, I'm not sure exactly where they're getting 2 years from here. Because
Yes, that's what I thought.
yeah, it's more like
I
a
know
year
a
and a half.
year. I know a year definitely, but I didn't know about 2 years.
No, I think they might have been stretching a little bit much there, but it has been definitely over a year.
Yeah, this is it now. I think we're done with this feud. At this now, you gotta be done with this feud at this point now, right?
Well, because the way Drew went out, like you know, it was like an injury angle almost, and like he is like he's taking some time off. I think because I mean, his like neck is jacked up or something. So,
Right.
um,
So you think there's actually a real injury there? Like,
oh, I think he said as much. His neck is bothering him. I think he said
okay,
as much. So, I mean, however long he's gone, I mean, look, I mean, if he's gone for 3 months or whatever, look, he can come back. I mean, because they've won one match apiece, so you could have a rubber match, later on this year or something. You could have him come back and attack Priest, you know, in
right.
September or something if you want, right?
I mean,
I mean,
not that I'm tired of this feud, but I don't need to see another match for a while.
well, we probably I don't think we are. I mean, so yeah, I think if there's going to be another one, it won't be until Drew comes back.
Yeah, but we'll see what happens to Damien. I imagine Damien will be at some point entered into the Money in the Bank qualifying. That's what I'm predicting situation. Who knows? I mean, he had briefcase
Um,
last year, so
yeah, so probably, and I mean, he's somebody good. I mean, he's on SmackDown. I mean, you could do a title match with him and Cena in September or something. Why not? Don't see why not. You know.
yeah. All right, and finally the main event last night we had, of course, Jey Uso defending his title, beating Logan Paul by pinfall. Of course, the match was solid, but the story of this match really is the shenanigans happen around it. Of course, early in the show we saw after John Cena beat R-Truth. You see John Cena and Jey Uso run each other backstage. Of course, you're gonna figure that John Cena will have some sort of a influence in this match, and he came out, of course, and jumped Jey Uso, and lo and behold, about the first time in about a month and some odd days, Cody Rhodes returns. I wasn't shocked he came out, and because in real time I said he may come out now. I told my wife that in real time. I was watching it and say, "This is Cody Rhodes' time." I'm shocked that they decided to do this though, because I guess maybe this is the swerve, because I was saying that, and you and I was saying this on the show for weeks now, that we don't expect Cody Rhodes to be back at the earliest to Money in the Bank.
Yeah, because I I didn't know, I didn't think that they had some other kind of match lined up for him other than to try and get, to get the title back.
Right.
So they're gonna, they're doing a tag team match at Money in the Bank, Cody and Jay with versus Logan Paul and Cena.
Which, by the way, Rob, I didn't like how they did that. Like Cody literally just like spilled out the beans on, oh, you got your partner, I got this my boy Jey Uso. Why don't you let that cook for another day and then do something on Raw and then announce it? Or then like challenge on Raw. It's kind of hokey.
Yeah, because I think you could have saved that because
Yeah,
Cody coming back last night was fine. Like you could do that.
yeah, I'm cool
But
with that.
and also it also adds some importance to, it was a thing, it adds some importance to the show, right? It
Mm-hmm.
was, because if you didn't watch it last night, then you missed it, right?
Right.
Um,
But back in 1988,
so
if you missed it, you're done, kids.
yes, I mean by not having anything like that there, then I mean throwaway show is kind of a harsh thing to say, but if without that big angle at the end, I mean, there just, there wasn't as much to watch it for. There was, I mean, really, the only thing, there's just without that big angle at the end, other than like the Bronson Reed part at the beginning, there wasn't anything that you absolutely had to sit down and watch it for, right?
No, right. And I,
So
I,
by
I got
so having Cody come back at the end, that does, that was a good idea, I think, and it helped,
Oh,
so
I agree with that. I think Cody and knowing that, I think that's a swerve in itself because we all expected him to come at Money in the Bank, and him coming out the main event is what kind of cool. What I didn't like was the whole him challenging and just giving the match out Money in the Bank when we could have waited till the next night on Raw for him to, or even SmackDown to announce it.
yeah, you could have done it on SmackDown. You could have, and or you could have done, yeah, you could have had something continue on Raw, and then you could have, and then Friday you could have had Cody come out there, and then they announced the match. Um,
I guess the only defense though, Rob, for that is that because we are 2 weeks away from Money in the Bank, maybe they want to get a shit out and about now. Have this thing hyped for 2 weeks. The
oh
match.
yeah, 'cause, I mean, like I don't keep up with how are the tickets selling, week by week or whatever.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, in terms of Cody, knowing that Cody's going to be on the show, I mean, it does make a difference. Um, and because it looks like Roman's not going to be there.
Yeah.
But knowing that Cody and Cena are going to be on the show makes a difference.
Right.
So in terms of interest and all of that. So yeah, I mean, I can understand them wanting just to get that out there as soon as, quickly as they can.
Yeah, the calendar's 2 weeks away, and if you don't do it now, you lose 2 more days until Raw. And in the case of Cody Rhodes, he's on SmackDown, so now you're waiting possibly another 5 days on top of that, or 6 days on top of that to announce it. I guess it makes sense. It makes sense from the business point of view. I just hate how hokey it sounded, but
Yeah,
again,
so and then like 'cause we don't know how many dates Cena has between now and Money in the Bank, like how many times he's actually gonna be on TV.
probably the low
So
20s now, right? Like 22, maybe 22.
yeah, I mean, I'm talking about as far as between now and Money in the Bank, like how many, whether he's going to be on TV before then. So if Cena's not going to be on TV before the PLE, then you needed to do something with while he was there on the premises.
Yeah,
You know,
they're willing to do that hokey situation for the sake of doing it the right way. It does feel like right now, like we've been speculating about what's next this summer, and you and I speculated that we probably going to see a Cody Cena rematch at SummerSlam, and it feels like we're on the way there.
that'd be my guess. And
What else would you do besides that? Because I don't see Cena being champion this entire run. I don't see John Cena taking the belt with him
oh
in
no,
December.
no,
You
he's not
know,
doing that.
And
And
you keep saying they can turn babyface again.
I mean, yeah, you gotta have him.
Do you? Do I mean? I know I keep saying I keep challenging you, buddy, but do you really have to do that?
Yeah, he's got to finish as one. Yeah, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
he's got to yes, he's got to finish as one because yeah, he's got to end it. As yeah, he's got to end it back as he was, right? Because if not, I mean, as this thing has gone on, it's. I mean, it was dragging. I just don't. You know, I, yeah, I think you got to because I don't think you have it's made now. I don't think you have 7 more months worth of matches to put together with him as a heel. I just don't because I think I'm pretty sure that Cody's going to be the one to take the title off of him.
Yeah.
So, the, so between now, I mean, if you stretch that out until December, then you got that's 7 months of.
The only part of the calendar it makes sense if you stretch it out past SummerSlam is Survivor Series. It makes Survivor Series a bigger deal. Which again, we could that's a whole nother topic. We'll probably do later in the year about Survivor Series and how to fix Survivor Series because that's something that I've been saying for years. I don't understand how WWE still has not figured that out yet. But yeah, it seems like
Um,
SummerSlam should be we. He doesn't need a title. He got 17. The goal was 17. He got 17. Let's move on.
yeah, and I just because if he's not going to lose the title until December, then we kind of reached a point. Then after honestly after SummerSlam, we're kind of in nothing matters territory. You know what I mean?
I also kind of feel too also that the title reign has been kind of. I want to go so far as say mid because it's only been only a month and some odd days.
I mean,
But I think the whole heel turns already lost his luster already now. Well, losing his luster already.
yeah. I mean, yeah, because one, I think part of it is just him not being there so often. And now I got look people as much as people complain about Roman. Roman was not part time like for 2 years. From those first 2 years, he was there every week,
Right.
and he wrestled on TV. You know, so I mean those first 2 years he wrestled on TV. He wrestled at house shows. He did all the pay per views, and he was out there on TV every week, like for 2 years. He didn't become a part time guy until 2 years in.
Hmm.
Um, Cena being a part time guy from jump, and then we just go on these long stretches with him just not being there, and then it's just, and then like the way the character is kind of gone. I just it's not really doing it for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because again, this is where the whole not having the Rock around hurts because the whole premise was that he didn't just turn heel. He sold out and he joined the Rock, and that has just not been. So now we're kind of like, well, what was the point? Like, what's his motivation returning heel? Really, like the motivation he's been trying to give us. I don't know, just it doesn't really, it doesn't really work. I mean,
Yeah. I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying.
yeah, I mean, yeah. So it's like selling out to join the Rock. There's supposed to be some reason to do that, and the Rock should be involved in that. And because like we uh using like Star Wars as an example, Anakin Skywalker, he didn't turn bad and just go and act like a jerk, right? He turned to the dark side. He joined the Emperor, and he went around doing the Emperor's bidding and whatnot, right?
Yeah.
And the Emperor was involved in everything going forward. Right. He wasn't just walking around just being an asshole, right? With a lightsaber. And that's kind of what we got here, right? So Cena turned to the dark side and he joined the Emperor, and then the Emperor went home, and now he's just walking around being an asshole, and with no real, you know,
I also think it's fallen. It's fallen. I don't know if to say it sounds falling flat. I just think what's happened is that with the Rock not being involved, because the Rock's was part of the turn, and then
yeah,
he hasn't been on TV since Elimination Chamber, and I think that's kind of taken the bloom off the rose as fast as it should have. The Rock being involved in it would have added more umph to it, and look, we may still get the Rock at some point down the road. I don't know. It's very possible. But him not being involved, and people, I don't know, people expected the Rock to be there when he was never promised to be there in the first place. I get that part, but at the same time, the Rock being involved with the turn was the whole reason why this thing worked. Also, on top of that, because there's a story there across
yeah,
all board. They were telling a story about Cody and the Rock. There's a story with the Rock and Cena anyway, the history of those two guys, and then he just disappears. So, and look, we may get that course correction happening down the road, but right now it feels flat in a sense. We got a little bit of a Randy thing. That's cool, nostalgia. Now what? R-Truth is okay, fine, because there's something there.
yeah,
And and of course, now the Cody thing should be a nice distraction next couple months. But then beyond that, now what?
yeah. Because I mean, after Money in the Bank, you got again, you got Night of Champions, and then you got SummerSlam. So you got
And
you
a
got
main
you
event,
got
and a main event,
LA.
and a main event too. Also, you want to count that
Yeah.
as well.
So you got three major shows in after this one, after Money in the Bank. And you gotta yeah, I mean, you gotta flesh that out, and it's missing. It's just that extra, that there's just a missing piece to all of it. Like like when Hogan joined the NWO, right? He
Yeah,
joined the NWO. He joined Scott Hall and Kevin Nash, and then and then the next time you saw him from then going forward, you saw him with Scott Hall and Kevin Nash. He didn't join them that one night, and then from there on out, he coming out there by himself.
yeah, exactly.
He joined the Evil Collective, right?
Yep,
And we saw like with the Bloodline, I mean Roman turned, but then eventually, he brought other people in, and there was a story to how he basically manipulated Jimmy and Jay into coming along and bringing Sammy along and all this type of stuff. And you have those. Everyone needs to be involved. The people involved in all the big story. Everyone's got to be involved in it, right? Who's supposed to
right.
be everyone who was a big player in the big pivotal part of the story needs to stay involved because they supposedly play a role, right? And so one of the big players here is just not here, and
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
taking away from everything. Uh,
Yeah. I hope at some point we get him back, maybe Money Bank or something. Maybe
yeah.
who
Oh, I
knows?
think um, maybe it's SummerSlam. I mean, I think he'll. I guess the thing about it is, I think I don't think he's not dialed in to what the day to day what they're doing. Right. Like he shows up kind of
When he wants.
yeah.
Here's my question to you, Rob. Then, with all this, if we turn back the clock a little bit, could the Cena heel turn have worked without Rock?
Um yes. I think I think you could have he could he went to the Elimination Chamber. I think he could have gone into WrestleMania with him and Cody both as baby faces, like Hogan and Warrior, and then you could have had him cheat to win
At the at
at
Mania?
WrestleMania.
Okay, so
Right.
you would have built it up after two baby face WrestleMania main event, and then he does the whole you do the Rock Austin thing from 17, where like the Austin just goes nuts, you know, and kind of
or I mean, you could just play it straight all because it's I mean it's Cody and John Cena. You could have just played it straight. It's like I mean, and then he gets to and then they're in the main event, and it's going down to the wire, and then you have him cheat.
The only thing though is that, and you got to bake this into also, the Cena heel turn did make the weeks between Elimination Chamber and WrestleMania palatable, because remember we went 7 weeks between events.
Yeah,
and we would, and even with the Cena heel turn, we were still complaining about, oh, damn, this is a long build, man. So can you imagine not having anything in between to keep us satiated until the main event? Not having, if you just had the Cena Cody build as baby faces, there is nothing really to distract us to keep us satiated until we get to the match. So it's a double-edged sword there a little bit. You know what I mean?
yeah. I think. Well, I think you would have just. I think you might have just needed to give Cody like a side feud for a month because they had 7 weeks. Yeah. I think you might have just had to give him like, have just a month.
But that wouldn't have been enough, though, man. To be honest, that would have been enough because the Cena heel turn ate up at least a month of good programming, because between the 2 weeks of the reaction, then he came back after 2 weeks he came on Raw 2 weeks after the turn. Okay, you got 2 weeks of promos, actually 3 weeks of promos, really, to be honest with you. Okay, so they were able to eat up 5 weeks of programming of Cena between the actual turn, the reaction to the turn, of course, and people being shot by for 2 weeks. Then him coming on Raw for the first time after 2 weeks after, and then the promos that preceded after. We don't have that anymore. I don't know. I don't know if it's the only thing I can see them doing, maybe, but at the same time, it would have taken away from the match. But although we find out a week before the match happened is that Kevin Owens was injured, was that maybe you throw Randy Orton in the equation. Because remember, the Orton Cody tease did happen, but of course, Orton was involved with Kevin Owens at the time before the injury was announced, like 2 weeks before Mania. So
Yeah.
I think it had to happen. I think the whole purpose of doing that was to fill in programming for a month, and this is the problem. When you're booking these things, you're booking it out. So okay, we're going to book WrestleMania, but now how are we going to fill in time for 7 weeks? I guarantee you, next year they're going to throw a main event in between Elimination Chamber and WrestleMania. I guarantee it.
They should, and also, well, I guess the other thing is that
If of course if the calendar stays the same way. If the calendar stays the same way.
Yeah, well, now I think because WrestleMania is going to be earlier in the year next year. So
is that confirmed? Because remember, what's in a second? Because they just moved it.
Yeah. Well, because all right.
Let me check.
Sometime, because I think like the first couple of years of the brand split, they didn't settle everything up until like March, right? I mean, as far as even like who the world champion was going to be or the universal champion or whatever. For several years after when the brand split first started, they were doing title changes in February and even March. And then the last few years, they've just kind of sat on the belts. Not every belt, but there's some belts that just sat on them, for the and that doesn't help, right? I mean, especially like the world and the universal title, the past few years, they just, I mean, they had, not that they didn't have any matches with the champion, but the kind of the vibe and the air that you got, was just pretty clear that they were just going to be, they were sitting on them until WrestleMania, right? And so I don't know, I think they need to be a little more active next year, I think.
Well, to your point,
even if you don't do a title change, you need, I think, your top 4 champions, your 2 men and women's top champions, they need to be more active, next year.
Well, first off, they can, to fix this, they can also move the Elimination Chamber even a week later. If the calendar in 2026 is going to have Rumble again in February, it doesn't need to be. It could be 5 weeks out. Elimination Chamber 5 weeks out. Now, the calendar, if they follow the same calendar, okay, hold on real quick. So that's actually a good segue now to our next topic here. WrestleMania 42, New Orleans has now been pulled as a couple days ago. And by the way, the calendar, you were right. The calendar got moved to a week earlier than it was this year. Which again, people say, "Oh, not a big deal." No. Every week matters. Every week
Yes.
matters in wrestling. Every week matters because remember you're booking 2 shows, so a week. So therefore, those things matter. So that's one thing. So they did shorten the calendar. Now that's assuming that wherever the next location is going to be, which we're hearing is probably could be Vegas again, they keep the same dates, which I imagine they will. I don't know why they would change that now last minute. But having said that, first off, your reaction to them pulling this, and what do you any speculations as to why they did this?
Well, it looks like at first, the first impression I had was that it was the city that was having issues and had to back out. But now it looks more like and kind of some of the reporting that's come out since then, it looks more like they did it. And like apparently, it looks like just Las Vegas may have they wanted them to come back, and I think it looks like they may have just opened the checkbook big enough to make them, you know, switch up. And now, because they, I mean, I don't know. It looks kind of like I don't know. I don't know if you want to set that kind of precedent. I mean, because now, I mean, if they, if they can, if they, if they've made it clear that that they will back out of something, um, I'd be a little gun shy about going in an agreement with them. But this is it's really weird because because they had The Rock announce New Orleans, they had him announce it on TV. And then the people from the city had all made the big announcement and everything, right? And so for them to just kind of pull out and be like, "Nah, we're not doing it," and they promised them a future WrestleMania, but uh, this I think this is a TKO move here.
It's exactly TKO. That's exactly what it said, and it's a corporate move. We've been complaining about the corporate, this thing going very, very corporate obviously the last couple of years, and with the advertising and all this stuff, and we've been complaining about that. We discussed on the show leading up to WrestleMania about the ticket sales to Vegas and this and that. Obviously, they still made a lot of money because even though it probably didn't sell out, they still mask it with it was the biggest revenue ever WrestleMania and this and that. But
Yeah,
that's because of money. Come on now. That being said, like these are bad presses being set here, I think, by the company. I think if I'm a person that goes to WrestleMania every year and I am planning my trip a year out in advance, look, granted, tickets aren't on sale yet,
no.
but if I'm planning my trip already, you announced this thing literally a month ago. If I'm someone who wants to see WrestleMania and I know a year out that I'm going to New Orleans to do this, I'm kind of pissed off a little bit. Now, granted, it's
Yeah,
a minority. It's a minority now because most people don't wait. Most people don't buy the tickets for WrestleMania or the plane tickets this early anyway. But still, it's the principle.
yeah, because like it is, and then and then you also, I mean, you're budgeting, right? So if you
Yeah,
um because like when we went to Philly, like I reserved a hotel. I made the hotel reservation immediately as soon as they announced it because you don't want to wait.
yeah,
But I mean, but and then I mean, budgeting to go to New Orleans is different than budgeting to go to Las Vegas.
absolutely.
Um,
And with those prices, shoot,
yeah, I mean, so it's like okay, like for me, like New Orleans was it was a long shot, but it was not out of the realm of possibility. Vegas is, you know, you know,
Oh, even my wife and I considered it. New Orleans. Because we were talking about like, do you want to go WrestleMania one night or whatever next year? She's like, yeah, well, it's not a bad idea. You know, we probably won't go ultimately, but it was definitely in consideration. Vegas not in consideration for us, and
no,
that's everything we saw. That's before we even equate everything we saw with the price and stuff. Um, I think Vegas also saw this too. Also, it's not just WrestleMania, the event itself; it's what everything around it brings, the amount of money it brings to the city, all the shows. Remember, it's not just WrestleMania; it's SmackDown, it's a Hall of Fame show, it's
yeah,
all the little conventions, the meet and greets. It's Raw after
yeah,
WrestleMania. So WrestleMania is a 4 or 5 day event in
yeah,
general.
and
So it's big
then
money.
and like I know it's not their concern, but all the other kind of indie shows and whatnot just set up in town, you know, that weekend. So it's a pretty disruptive, thing. And yeah, I just it doesn't it's one of those things that just kind of doesn't sit right with me.
No, not at all. Not for me.
And I think I think in the long run, like they're doing it now because they can, but in the long run, look, the worm always turns, right? We know we've been at this long
You
enough.
said
We
this in a
know that.
podcast months ago that a bubble will burst some point. Where we don't know.
Yeah, and the business always goes in cycles, and there are going to be times where you need the city more than the city needs you. And like right now, yeah, right now, the past few years, you know, the cities have needed them more than the opposite. But there will be, because it always goes in cycles. It's never up forever, and there'll be, yeah. I mean, there'll come a time where you will need the city to look out for you more than they need you to come to them. And it's just, yeah, it's it's not the best idea, I don't think, because I mean, the last time I think they did this for Mania was at WrestleMania 7,
Yeah,
and
well,
they didn't
but
they
that
didn't
was
change
practical.
the movie.
That was practical reasons, though. Well, although if you believe that, they said death threats because of the
Oh,
big
no,
big
no, it's
numbers.
just it wasn't selling.
It's bad. It's bad sales.
Yeah,
But that's practical though.
and
It
then
was
but
still
then
the,
they
it
stayed
was
in the
still the
same
same city
city.
too. Same city, right? It's still the
Then
same
just
city,
downsized the arena,
right?
and so yeah, this again, this is a corporate TKO thing, and because of course TKO is located in their headquarters in Vegas, or at least the UFC is. And again, I think this is another attempt at making it more like UFC. And you know, guys, it's not the same product. It's not
It's the
the
same crowd,
same.
brother. That
It's not the
Dubro
same.
shit.
It's not.
You and I, that Dubro shit that UFC that's not the same crowd. I give a perfect example of that. Last night, Tampa. Okay, by the way, Tampa, Florida. In Florida, I live in Florida. It's a virtually a red state. Our governor was there, who's very popular. He got booed out the building.
Oh, last night.
Yes.
Oh, okay. I didn't. Yeah. Okay.
So again, ain't the same shit. So
No.
ain't the same crowd. Ain't the same crowd. Ron
No.
DeSantis got booed out the building last night. Ain't the same shit. I told you, like, there's an argument made that most hardcore wrestling fans are more left leaning people, or at the very least, center to left people leaning people than Dude Bros.
Oh, yeah. Yes, absolutely. And then also, I mean, also, I think we're used to the wrestling audience. Like, you don't bring that politics shit in there, man.
They don't give a fuck about that stuff. Yeah,
Because I mean, we knew that the McMahon family, that they're Republicans, and that we knew that,
and we always knew that.
but he didn't bring that shit in the building for the show, right? You didn't, they didn't have, he didn't, they didn't have George W. Bush up there in a skybox or anything like that,
Right.
they didn't do that. Um, and yeah, I mean, like you said, I think it is a more left the audience is more because Vince Senior, Vince McMahon, he wanted everybody to come to the damn show. He didn't want anybody. You know he didn't want a specific group of people, or he didn't try to get more of a specific group of people that were not interested. He didn't try to get them interested, right? And just because over recent years, look, the audience has gotten more female. The audience has gotten more people of color. Over the past 20 years, they made a concerted effort to do that. And previously, it's been more family oriented, and then look, cutting back, eliminating so many of the house shows is another example of that, because the house shows were always a family event.
Yeah.
That's where that was the one thing, that was the thing that, a family could afford to go to. And we've talked before how wrestling fans are more working people, not, we're not casino whales, right? We're not people
Yeah.
we're not people who fly out to Vegas and spend the weekend at a casino hotel and lose a bunch of money at the crap table or whatever while we're going to see the boxing match. Like, that's not us.
Right. I'm curious though, Rob. If so, we saw tickets for the WrestleMania this past year in Vegas. Tickets were lowest seats, the highest seats up there in the top section. And I know this one of my coworkers and buddies went to night 2, and you were correct. He pays $700 per ticket for his show. Him and his girlfriend paid $700 a ticket to get there. That was correct. Does that number go higher next year? Trends are probably gonna be yes, right? Unless they lower it a little bit now or stabilize it, because they didn't sell it out. They didn't sell out the WrestleMania last year, so I'm sure they probably gonna look at that and say maybe you should take it down just a little bit, but it's still pricey.
I think they're going to keep going up until it backfires. I think. Yeah, I think they are. And of course, and then look, this is not a political podcast, but the other elephant in the room is that if God forbid, some shit happens and we end up in a recession or something, because that happened in the early 90s. That was part of it. Yes, like we were people, some things had run their course as far as, in the early 90s, but there was also a recession, right? And that kind of added to it. And so, and then, around there was a little dip around like 2009-ish, and there was a recession going on then also.
Right.
So if it happens, and right now their decisions being made, we don't know how they're going to turn out. But if that happens sometime in the near future, then you kind of have a perfect storm of them getting a little too high on their own supply, and people just not having the money, right?
Yeah.
So who knows? They might be trying just to pull in as much as they can. Like they might be just trying to pull in as much as they can while they can, and then they'll worry about that later. I don't know, but it's, yeah, it's, I think they're, I don't know. I think this is the time to be a little more, I think, more forward thinking, I think, and to not lose sight of who you are and how you got here, right? Because,
Right.
They got here, look, they got to this point the way that they'd always gotten to big periods, right? Because the business, things hadn't really changed. Even, the bloodline stuff took off, but they were still operating as they always had. And it got them to the point of, their biggest period in a long time. And so I would just caution them that just remember how you got here.
Yeah.
Like, you didn't get here the way you've been, all this stuff you're doing this year. That's not how you got here.
And I'll say this much too. Also, I'm not sitting here clamoring for Vince McMahon to come back. Obviously,
we're not doing
he should be back. However, this is where Vince has missed. This is where Vince McMahon has actually missed. he has a better pulse about the wrestling business than say, what we have now. I think Vince knew how to delegate both worlds. He knew. I don't think Vince McMahon is allowing $700 seats on top of the stadium for WrestleMania 41. That's not happening on Vince's watch at all.
Yeah, I mean, unless the whole country is so rich that everybody can afford it.
But it's not.
Right.
But it's not. We know that already.
Yeah.
So Vince had a better pulse about the wrestling and knowing who his consumers are. That's simple.
Yeah.
It's just that simple.
Yes.
So
And because wrestling it's like the circus. It's like a magic show.
yeah,
It's not boxing. It's not UFC. Um, and the circus and is for families. The magic show, even and like that's even yes, you have risque storylines and you have some risque moments in certain matches and whatnot. But the business model, the way you reach out to customers, the way you sell the product, and all that, it's for working people. It's for families.
right.
You know, it's not for casino whales.
That's
Okay.
right. That's right.
Um, and so I hope that somebody in there, you know, figures that out. I mean, Hunter worked with Vince long enough. I think he knows that. But I mean, The Rock is so far removed from that. He's so far removed from all of this
Yeah, he
stuff.
hasn't been a regular guy. I mean, I don't even count 2012 at all. At all.
No, no, he
No,
is
because
so
he.
far removed from.
Yeah, and I think that could be to detriment for the company. Like he may be hurting the company more than he's helping at this point now. Like yeah, you want to see the pops and all that, but he could be hurting the company more than helping if he's not really keeping a nice balance. And that's what I'm afraid of going forward for this company. But we'll see. We'll see. I mean, we can all be wrong about all this now. We can all be wrong about all this,
I mean,
but I don't like where this is going. In terms of as and ultimately my biggest fear as a pure wrestling fan is I don't want all this other stuff to infiltrate my love for the love of the WWE and me being a fan of 40 years. I'm
yeah,
afraid that it may start affecting it a little bit.
because if it gets to the point where I can never go to anything, that's a problem.
It's a massive problem.
Because you know, because I mean, I just went to WrestleMania in Philadelphia.
There's a
Okay,
reason I bought the beanie for you downstairs, the beanbag.
and
Okay, get off my bed now, out the room. Or you grounded now. Anyway, all right.
yeah, and so and then look, I used to go to all the house shows, especially the past few years when I had the disposable income and the time to do
Yeah,
them.
yeah,
I went to all of those, right? Now, if I went to SmackDown this year, but TV, TV can be it can if something important happens, it can be a fun experience. But if it's just a run of the mill TV episode, it can be just not fun at all. I mean,
right. Absolutely.
um,
I told you about my experience last year at Raw. I went to Raw for the first time in was it 20 years? Over 20 years and 25 years actually. Last year and it was fine, I guess. I did my kids more than anything else to have them experience it, but I
yeah,
didn't really enjoy it because it was too much stop and go and TV and oh my god.
yeah. So, as far as going to a show that doesn't have, being able to go to a PLE or or go to something like a house show, that's important. It's important that your regular viewers, your regular customers are still able to do that.
Yeah,
Um, and so if it gets to the point where if you either price, if you price us out or you inconvenience us, logistically to the point where we can't go to anything anymore,
right. That's a
that's
problem.
a problem.
It's a massive
Because
problem.
because just watching the stuff on TV, that ultimately that after a while that kind of loses its luster. It does. Um, and so yeah, I mean, and yeah, we sound like dinosaurs. We want to bring back the good old days, but um, they're just because like, well, let's look at the NFL, right? The NFL, they put more and more games on streaming services,
Hmm.
but they're not leaving network television. And every game that's on some streaming service, it's on TV in the local market, right? They're
Yeah.
not forcing you to so you can still see your favorite team every week, regardless of whether the game is on. Even if the game is on Amazon, they still show it locally on your local TV network. So they're not losing touch. They're still keeping in touch with the local fans of each team. Um, and I think we're looking at more and more like a situation where they're not doing that here, where they're just continuing to distance themselves from the customers who got them to where they are.
Yeah.
And look, it probably yeah, will it matter this year? Probably not. But there will come a point where it actually is to their detriment. That if they continue to price regular people out and in price and or inconvenience regular people out, um, there'll come a point where it does matter and where it does hurt them.
Yeah. All right. One last thing. We can get out of here. I think tonight is an NXT Battleground.
Yes.
I told you on the show last week that I haven't watched NXT regularly, probably in about say 3 years. I know some wrestlers here and there and that, but I don't follow. Like I said, there's too much wrestling in the week. You got to pick and
Yeah.
choose things to watch. Same problem with AEW. So I'm gonna ask the same question I asked you last week with AEW. I'm gonna ask you now with NXT because you do watch NXT. What's going on?
Yes.
Why should I be watching NXT right now in 2025?
Okay. For one, if I would say that if you're if you if you're a primarily if you're a fan of women's wrestling more than men's wrestling, if you are, um, NXT week in and week out is the best booked women's division of anybody as far as finding stuff for the women on the roster to do,
Mm-hmm.
giving them TV time, giving them enough matches, all that kind of thing. So there's that. And also, if you are looking for more, like we said, Chelsea Green is more like a traditional silly kind of wrestling character. They do more of that there, and because you have people like Tony D'Angelo, who's like he's a mob boss, right?
Right.
And he and his gangster buddies, like they literally like kill people. Okay, okay, there've been like a couple people who been like like one guy, they threw a guy in the river, and because they have people who've gotten, there have a couple people who've gotten fired from the company, like real life fired, and they worked it in the storyline where they got whacked by the mob, by the D'Angelo mob, right? And so there's things like that, right? Um, it's funny, right? Because because he comes like, look, yeah, we took care of that guy for you, you could thank us, right? I mean, stuff like that, and that's been part of the storyline.
Right.
And so if you're looking for kind of more kind of wacky traditional wrestling characters, they do more of that there. Um, and again, they do more stuff with the women's division as far as giving them things to do. I say those are the two main reasons. Now the
Would you?
downside is
Downside.
because again, it's developmental, and I can tell you if you really play it, if you really if you pay attention, you can tell like the difference. Because like, look, my supervisor's not a wrestling fan. He knows I'm a wrestling fan, right? So
Right.
he's been a little curious every now and then, and so he tuned into NXT a couple of times just to watch it, and he was telling me about it. And he has no trained eye for what is good or bad ring work, right? He has no trained eye for that at all. He could tell some little differences, you know, between the people who were learning and and whatnot. He could tell that a lot of those people there were still learning, right? From just watching them wrestle. So if that matters, if that's a big deal to you, then yeah, you might look at that. You might find some of the matches a little bit lacking by comparison to the best stuff on the main roster. But again, if you're into women's wrestling, they do more of it than anybody else. And if you're into the more traditional kind of wacky wrestling characters, they do more of them there than anywhere else right now. And so those will be my two big reasons. And also, I mean, if you're asking me like picking and choosing between that and the main roster, it's also, I mean, it's less time consuming. Uh, if you want to be in the NXT, if you want to be dialed in all the way on NXT, it's just they have 2 hours of TV every week, and then every couple of months they have an NXT takeover, and that's it. You don't have to do all this other stuff. You
Yeah.
don't have to watch 6 hours of TV, or in this case, like this week, it was 8 hours of TV because you had 6 hours. You had Raw, SmackDown, you had Saturday Night's main event. You don't have to do all of that. Um, you know, and it's less time consuming if you do
And
not.
I'm sure there's a crowd that only watch NXT. They don't watch any of the main roster. It's probably far and few, but people who probably do watch NXT and love their material as opposed to the main
Oh
roster.
yeah,
I will say this though. Do you prefer the William Regal led stuff or do you prefer Shawn Michaels?
um, I prefer honestly. I think they're okay. The William Regal led stuff. I mean, they had better matches and because they had more veteran wrestlers,
Correct.
and
Different,
so they had.
different wrestlers from different like promotion, for example, too, like TNA and
Yeah, I mean, they had guys, like in that stretch from like 2017 to 2020. They were, I mean, it was basically, you know,
so that's the stretch I liked. I like that stretch from the late aughts. It's
okay, well,
really
because
why
that's
I
when they
liked
had. I mean, that's when people were coming over from Ring of Honor, and
Ring
I mean,
That's it, yeah, Ring of Honor.
yeah. So I mean, they were veteran people, and so they were better wrestlers, and they were better at talking and all of that kind of thing. Um, but the now, I mean, so these people here, it is more developmental. So if you really, if you really pay enough attention, yeah, you can see that these are developmental people, and they're, and that, and all of that. So the wrestling was better under when Regal was running, and but as far as if you're not like if you want to see if you're more a sports entertainment person, then what they're doing now is more sports entertainment. It's more sports entertainment like.
See, that will hook me in there. That will hook me.
Yeah, because basically like because that 2017 to 2020 that was basically it was like Ring of Honor or indie shows with a bigger budget. And so, I mean, you had 5-star wrestling matches and all that stuff, but but now again, you get wackier characters and you have more sports entertainment kind of stuff going on now. So I will say, like, it's hard if you're already like if you're committed to Raw and SmackDown, then then taking on another thing is a big ask. So
Yeah,
but if you were to ask me, if you're tasting more towards sports entertainment and you like, and you're not as concerned with 5-star matches, then if you were to ask me which one should you watch every week, um, I would make a case that, replacing either Raw or SmackDown with NXT might be up your alley. Um, Again, it's hard to ask somebody to add it if you're already, if you're committed to Raw and SmackDown and you're going to stay committed, then yeah, it's hard to tell somebody, well, you need to watch this too. But if you're trying, if you're thinking, if you're thinking, if you're trying to pick and choose, and then I would tell you again, if you want more sports entertainment, and then and you want to see a little more women's wrestling stuff, then I would tell you then it's I would tell you give NXT a try, and if you end up liking it more than Raw or SmackDown, then just stick with it instead of one of those.
Do you 'cause there was a time in 2020 where I was saying that 2020 when I was like watching it at a peak, and the product was so good. This is back when Undisputed Era, those guys, obviously Ciampa's still there with Gargano. There was a time I was saying to myself, and it might have been because of the fact that the main roster at the time also was not up to snuff in terms of like great quality work at the time anyway. Also pre-bloodline and all that stuff. But at the time, I was saying, should NXT be used as a third brand on level with Raw and SmackDown? Could you ever see a world where like NXT is used not just as a developmental, but more as a third brand? Like if you're doing a draft, you're drafting out of the roster of the three brands. Could you see a world where that happens? Or no? Is that come and gone, you think?
Well, they were close. Like in 2019, it was close because the roster in 2019 was,
Stacked.
I mean, in terms of just being good wrestlers, the NXT roster in 2019 was every bit as good as the main roster.
I agree with that. I mean, yeah, going through it was Walter at the time back then. The guys, some of the guys you have on the roster now were cooking in 2019 on there. I could see a world where like they're on par with Raw and SmackDown.
Yeah, I mean, and like Damian Priest was there, and well, Matt Riddle's not in WWE anymore, but he was there at the time. And then and then Ciampa and Gargano were there, and look, Io Sky was there, Rhea Ripley was there, and
Yeah,
Candice LeRae was there,
Bianca
and
Belair.
Bianca Belair was still there in 2019,
Yep.
right? So yeah, and Tony Storm was there in 2019, and so yeah, you definitely talent wise and wrestling ability wise in 2019, they were on par with the main roster. Um, but it's a third. It's just at the end of the day, it's the third show, and you're asking people again to watch. It's like, okay, you already watched Raw and SmackDown. We want you to watch this too. Okay, you already watching 5 or 6 hours of TV. Now we want you to make it 7 or 8, and that's always going to be a hindrance because like, look, you can look. I can watch 3 Law and Orders because they're only an hour. Okay, I can watch all. I can watch all 3 Law and Orders every week. It's only an hour. Each one's only an hour, right? Or some people, will watch the, Chicago Fire, Chicago PD, Chicago, right? Some people watch those, but it's only 3 hours total. Or the NCIS.
With ads, of course, with ads.
Oh yeah, but I mean, but it's only 3 hours of your time, and
Right.
or if you watch all the NCIS stuff, 3 hours of your time total. But Raw, SmackDown, NXT is 8 hours.
Yeah.
And that's always there comes a point where it's like,
yeah.
well, I got other stuff I want to do.
And only that, I come to terms with that now. Like we're like, as much as I was okay, I was like, oh my god, it should be on par with SmackDown. End of the day, I think NXT is special for a reason, and it's in the right spot. It should be special, and it's special for a reason, and that's why it should be left to its own device and all that, and let it be developmental and call it, because they do good work, and I think once you start measuring up, I also don't want some of the shit that they do on Raw SmackDown just to cipher through NXT, because I feel like when I was watching NXT back then, every show mattered in the same way, in a way that Raw SmackDown did not. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because they were getting less TV time. So every show they did, because again, we just said it, the takeovers were done every few months. So you didn't have a more than one show a week to impress or to do spots. So they would do title matches on NXT television, whereas Raw SmackDown they not much select on that. They'd say those really for the big events. You know what I mean? So yeah, I think now looking in the hindsight, looking at the business and all that, I'm kind of glad that NXT is kind of where it's at because they do a great job doing what they do, and I think I don't need I don't need the main roster of executives to pollute it. Although Triple H again was the one that launched NXT in the first place, so maybe he'd be a guy that would probably neuter it well, in comparison to what Vince probably would have done. So, but yeah, that's how I feel about that. I probably won't watch it tonight because I was in the Knicks games tonight and I'm invested in basketball and Stanley Cup. But I'm gonna try these next few weeks to watch some of the programming on NXT and especially AEW and see if they can draw me back. That's my goal. Is start watching some of that stuff throughout the week and see if I can get into it.
Yeah, and I guess what I would tell you is, again, because we all only have so much time in a week, so
yeah.
But you might find yourself liking one of those things more than watching Raw or SmackDown. If that's then, and because I struggle with this, right? Because I end up kind of sitting through Raw or SmackDown every week, regardless. And then some nights, some weeks I just don't watch NXT. And then there have been weeks where I kind of wish I had watched NXT and not Raw or SmackDown. And it's hard to break the habit, but don't be afraid to break the habit. If you watch NXT for a few weeks and you find yourself liking it better, then just stick with it.
Yeah, I think I'll give it a shot next couple weeks. So, anyway, anything want to plug before we get out of here?
Well, as always, every week, Mindless Wrestling Podcast, me, DJ, and Jason, and me every couple of weeks on the Rob the Genius podcast. And you can also read stuff that I write at robsthegenius.com.
Yeah, I saw you wrote a. Oh no, wrote you did a new pod on Wrestling Data. Just dropped.
Yeah, because I was just I've been, of course, I look at this stuff all the time, and I was just curious as to whether or not the format changes have affected the audience numbers, and they have. Well, SmackDown and NXT have changed. Yeah, basically SmackDown has fewer viewers now because they're on cable instead of network.
Yeah,
and NXT has a few more viewers now that they're on the CW instead of on cable.
Right.
But Raw, surprisingly, hasn't really changed. They may have swapped some people out. They swapped some people out for others, but the actual total amount of people is about the same as it was.
Yeah, I think you may get even a little bit a tick more on that because people have Netflix. Most people have Netflix now or some version of Netflix. So that's not debate down the road. I'll probably listen to the podcast today and maybe I'll sift out a topic out of that and we can discuss it on the show.
Yeah.
Of course, I'm on Twitter /X at EJ7. Falls count anywhere, of course. Part of the Earnestly podcast. On any audio catcher, of course, such as Apple Music, Spotify, Google Podcasts, you name it, Amazon. On Earnestly Podcast, of course, on YouTube at Earnestly Pod, on TikTok, Earnestly Pod, Instagram, Earnestly Pod. We will talk to you guys later. Until the next episode.